everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and speaking to us today from Mexico is Dr. Jonathan Ellerby. He has a PhD in comparative religion, and he has traveled around the world to meet and study with healers and teachers in more than 40 different cultures. Often featured as an expert in films, print, television, and radio, Jonathan has over 20 years of experience in the fields of holistic healing, spiritual counseling, integrative medicine, and corporate consulting. Today, he is the CEO of Tao Inspired Living, a wellness center and inspired living community in the Riviera Maya of Mexico. He has authored 2 international bestsellers, Inspiration Deficit Disorder and Return to the Sacred. And today we're going to discuss his new release, The Promise of Paradise. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, who doesn't want paradise? Jonathan, you had a successful job at Canyon Ranch, and I remember we had an exchange a few years ago. You had every material comfort there. What made you even consider giving it all up, particularly in these parlous times, to move to Mexico?
Yeah, a lot of people who look at what I'm doing now make the assumption that the Tao Center existed at that time, that maybe there was a building and maybe there was a luscious salary waiting for me down here. The reality is that two kind of extraordinary things happened, and I say that even though it's my own life. I actually left Canyon Ranch prior to securing my next step. And partly that was because the real reason for me leaving what I had was because I had a very clear and distinct feeling that it was no longer serving my highest good. So my motive to leave, in fact, wasn't that I knew what was next. It was just that I was really clear that what I was doing, had been extraordinary, but that it was finished. And then, within a very short period of time, the next opportunity really crystallized. And even then, it's important for your listeners to know that what I came down to was really a massive risk. The ground hadn't been broken on the building. Really, our income is in the future. But I believe in the vision, and I believe in what we're doing. So that's it was really something much more spiritual, I guess I'd say, than anything financial or practical.
I also get the impression from your book that you kind of need adventure to feel really alive. Do you think the quest for adventure is a basic human need, or is it a guy thing?
It's really, you asked 2 great questions there, which is it a basic human need and is it a guy thing? So quickly I'll say no and no. I don't think that everyone is hardwired for adventure. I think that if you look at personality profiling tools and programs like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or some of these other devices, you'll notice that certain people are more stimulated and fulfilled by adventure, and others are perhaps not. And then if you look at research on the psychology of men versus women, there certainly tends to be sort of a suggestion that maybe men are more likely to thrive on adventure. I think that's definitely been verified. But having acknowledged that A, there are types, it's not everyone, and B, more of those types will be men, I'll say that I do think that an adventure, or the occasional adventure, is essential for everyone. Because I think more than travel and more than taking extreme risks, the simple mythology of adventure is a part of our psyche. The basic archetype of leaving the known in search of a gift or some magical new piece of information or talent through a perilous trail. I mean, that's every movie, every book, and at some level, at some point, it's everyone's life.
Now, in addition to being a quest after adventure, I get the impression that this was also a spiritual quest for you. What were you feeling at the time? Was it a kind of divine discontent?
I'm Well, let's put it this way. My job for many years was helping coach people to create dramatic life changes. And so I was always, helping people identify where they were at. And the scale, so I'm going to speak generally first, usually starts with something very simple like, this doesn't feel right. It's more of a nagging feeling. It's something subtle. This doesn't feel like me. I don't feel like myself anymore. And when people hear those kinds of comments in their mind or coming out of their mouth, usually that's a sign that they're already in need of some kind of a reevaluation. It escalates from there, though. In fact, I wrote a book called Inspiration Deficit Disorder, where I talk about how ignoring the call of your intuition and the needs of your true self really can escalate into all kinds of disorders, from emotional ones to physical ones. And so, other signs for people, generally speaking, are a loss of energy, trouble sleeping, even trouble digesting, trouble focusing, addictive behaviors, and so on. For me, being someone who teaches the spectrum, I didn't wait so long till it got so bad. It was really at the earlier stages where it was just a very deep emotional response, just the awareness of not feeling engaged, and an intuitive sense that it was time to move on, that something was missing, or that something was new yet to be encountered.
You bring up a really interesting point. I interviewed a medical doctor and psychiatrist a few weeks ago who talked about hopelessness as being one of the precipitating factors in many, many cancers. And how many people are stuck in jobs that they hate out of fear for their own security. And what you're saying is that you need to get beyond that. You need to find the inspiration in your life. I loved your book, by the way, Inspiration Deficit Disorder. It was a great book. How do you weigh the despair or hopelessness in your present situation against the risks of not being able to provide for your family and so on?
Yeah, this raises really important practical questions. So the first of which is, let's just start with what kind of changes are people capable of? On the extreme end, I truly, truly, truly believe that people are more capable of surviving radical change than they realize, meaning new job, new city, new path, new partner, whatever it might be. And I think there's just a tremendous amount of social story and stereotype that keeps us in place, that keeps us fearful. On the other hand, even if we become aware of a radical change we might want to make, it's not going to always be practical. And sometimes it just might not be clear yet. So there's smaller kinds of changes people can make that are frankly often just as important or more than picking up and moving to the tropics. And it's the simplest things that people overlook, like how do we use our spare time? What kinds of people do we surround ourselves with? Something as simple as having a hobby or making sure we actually do something that's fun every week. And then we encounter different kinds of limiting thoughts and beliefs, which is this sort of very, I would call it classically Western mentality. There's never enough time. I have too much to do. And the simple fact is, no one has enough time. And of course you don't. Of course you have too much to do. So you might as well add in a few trips to the gym, an afternoon with friends, and a trip to some kind of a spiritual encounter once a week. Because you're not going to get everything done anyway. So make it a healthier to-do list and start from there. And what people are often shocked to find is just how quickly those touchstones and those inspiration points start to change their perspective and give them new energy, so that the previously difficult challenges and choices are suddenly feeling quite different.
The old saying, might as well be hung for a sheep as for a lamb, comes to mind. When the opportunity of this Mayan Riviera project appeared, you said that you had already quit your job and you were looking for something. It was like you were inviting the universe to fill this void. Is this what you consider the law of attraction?
Well, first of all, I should say, because if anyone there is considering major change, I definitely did a lot of research before I quit anything. So I had opportunities on the horizon, and this was one of them. It was unformed. It wasn't to come on as a CEO, but as a consultant. So what I had done before I took the big leap was I made sure that my big leap was at least somewhat realistic, and that if need be, I could at least do something different, if not my dream job. And I think that's really important for people to hear because, if you do have a family, I have a child, I had a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, I had to make sure that if for some reason the universe didn't provide, I wasn't being an absolute fool, but I wasn't committed to standing still either. So step one is make sure you do your research. And then step two is once you absolutely know that you need a change and that there are options, whether they're perfect or not, act as if the change were possible. Act as if the opportunities were waiting. Act as if the universe were benevolent. And typically, that is what shows up. Now, I will add a couple of qualifying points. You have to go into this with the mentality that this is all about learning and growth. It's not about getting what you want. Because if you try to attract things into your life based on the idea that stuff will make you happier, I hate to say it, but you're doomed. You're just going to find another form of unhappiness with a prettier package. If you approach this notion of attracting what you want or what you need with the awareness that really life is about learning and growing and being healed and transformed by every experience, then really whether it works out or not kind of doesn't matter. And the final point that I want to make that I think is really important for me, I'm sort of so-so on the law of attraction. It appears as though what I did was attracted an ideal dream into my life. I certainly sat down and did some visioning and writing about what I wanted. And what I'll say is it's a pretty cool synchronicity that what I got is pretty much what I was hoping for. But the reason why I don't say I attracted it into my life is because I put more emphasis on being clear and listening for what life wants from us rather than putting the emphasis on what I want from light. So the law of attraction to me for a lot of people is about me getting what I want, and what I'm talking about is being surrendered to what you feel life has in store for you.